Welcome to the Co-Authoring Chronicles podcast, 2 voices, 1 tale.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our podcast today. I'm Helen Corvis, and I'm here with my co-author.
Hi, it's Stefan.
And today we have a really exciting show. We are going to be welcoming Nate Gillick from Laterpress. So a little bit about Nate. Nate Gillick is the marketing and community lead for Laterpress. Over the last 3 years, he's talked to hundreds of authors about self-publishing, novel writing, and serializing fiction, and presented panels on those topics at conventions in Minnesota. He graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire with degrees in English, creative writing, and sociology. His debut portal fantasy novel, Welcome to the Nexus, the first book of the Plan Our Gates series, serialized on Kindle Vella and Laterpress. The final revised version of the book will be available on Laterpress and all retailers in May 2025. Nate is a huge proponent of mindfulness and mental health awareness. His first piece of advice for aspiring authors in the spirit of the 1999 movie Galaxy Quest is never give up, never surrender. So welcome, Nate. I am super excited. I know Stefan is as well to have you on our show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here and chatting with you guys. Always, I work from home, so anytime I get to talk with other people in the author space, it's a good day.
I love it. This is also anytime I get to talk to people, it's a good day. Anyways,
Yeah, and I remember when we were planning this, you just recently came back from Author Nation, so you must be really pumped with all of the author energy.
Oh my God. Author Nation is like if you're feeling creatively burned out or, down or anything, Author Nation is like the ultimate battery recharge. I went there and I just had such a wonderful time talking to a lot of different authors. I learned a ton. It felt super validating. Like, honestly, never in my life have I felt more like this is where I need to be. It was a delightful week, and very shortly off after I got off the plane back to Minneapolis, I told my boss that Author Nation was great and that I really wanted to go back next year. And my approval for that was pretty much automatic. So I already have a ticket secured for next year's show.
for those who aren't familiar, Author Nation is an independent author business conference, and it's got a lot of great reviews.
Yeah, I think maybe Helen, you and I should think about going.
I love it. I'm reading through it, and it sounds wonderful. And really, in the spirit of motivation, I can't imagine something that would be more helpful occasionally to sometimes go out there and talk to others in the same having the similar experience. So,
Yeah. Well, speaking of author experiences, we are here today to discuss Kindle Vella shutting down and all the serial fiction authors that are left wondering, what do we do? What's next? And so we'll just go ahead and kick this off then, Nate. The first question I had for you, and especially, you're fresh back from Author Nation. Um, what do you see as the current state of serial fiction, and where do you think it's headed in the next few years, especially for indie authors?
Yeah, it's a shame to see Kindle Vella shut down. I personally got my start there. Was serializing on Kindle Vella for a year before I joined the Laterpress team. Uh, I want to say about a year, at least 6 to 8 months. Um, that platform was very helpful for me. But the good news for everyone, in my opinion, the good news for everyone impacted by Kindle Vella shutdown is that on the broad level, I don't think the state of serial fiction has ever been better. There's many apps out there that are all gearing up for serial fiction. Authors can use their own websites to publish things. There's creator platforms besides ourself, like Substack and other places where you can publish serial fiction. So there's more places than ever to put that fiction out there. Some of them are largely geared around audience building. You can't really monetize. Others, like Laterpress, we let you monetize, and you can choose how to monetize your work. Subscriptions. People are very used to subscriptions. So lots of authors these days are using serializing as a way to consistently deliver chapters to people who are paying a subscription and making consistent, recurring, kind of predictable revenue that way. And so I think over time, you're going to be seeing more and more authors catch on to, hey, if I build up a fan base and I have people excited about my work, these people are happy to pay to be amongst the first to have the privilege of reading the new stuff. And so I think we're going to be seeing even more and more people serializing their work over time. Like, I really think that's going to become more and more normal. And with people able to read on their phones, their iPads, any kind of digital device, serial fiction has also never been more accessible. So overall, I'm excited for the future of serial fiction. It's how I intend to continue delivering the sequel to my novel as I'm writing it.
So I have a follow-on question to that, Nate. Is it February where people won't be able to download any more episodes off of Vella? Do you think there's going to be a mad dash where authors are going to need to move to a platform or somewhere just so that their readers can finish reading seasons that were on Vella? Do you think there'll be an opportunity there?
I'm hoping that a lot of authors have already started that process or are very deeply considering that. Because I think the final day that you can upload episodes is 3 days from now. I think it's this Thursday,
Hmm. Hmm.
December 5th as we're recording this. Um, and starting to communicate things out to, their readership that, hey, the story is going to be moving over to this platform or potentially multiple platforms. I definitely hope that the end of Kindle Vella isn't the end of anyone's stories, if they're still actively working on them, but it may be too late to finish them on Vella specifically, just because of how quick that chapter publishing deadline is coming up, if that
Yeah.
answers your question.
Yeah, yeah, it does.
And what I like about your answer, Nate, is that you really acknowledge that it may be a good idea to move to multiple platforms. I know we've discussed, Stefan and I, in previous episodes, some of the pros and cons, and even you mentioned there's different features that are available. So it's. I'm glad you're here today to kind of discuss Laterpress and what they can offer.
Yeah. Well, there we go then. Thanks, Helen, for that tie-in here. What unique features does Laterpress offer that set it apart from other serial fiction platforms? And how do these features cater specifically to the needs of serial fiction authors?
So I'm going to start with something that might not obviously sound like a feature, but I think it absolutely is. And that is the amount of flexibility and control that we offer authors. When somebody is publishing on Laterpress, we let authors decide what their own price is. It's not a platform like Kindle Vella deciding all episodes cost 10 tokens and tokens cost this, and your royalty rate is this. That's an example of a platform very heavily dictating what the pricing is and what you're going to get paid. We say, authors, you decide that. So you can sell serials by a season, pricing it like a finished book. Somebody pays $5, $10, whatever you want to price it as, and they get that whole season. We allow authors to sell chapter bundles. So you can choose X price for Y number of chapters. So you could sell 5 chapters for $1 or 10 chapters for $5. You have total control over those levers. We also have the ability that authors can set custom domains for their books so that it keeps your name and your branding more front and center, and Laterpress becomes a little bit more of an invisible host or partner in the background. For example, my book series on Laterpress is hosted at the domain plannergates.nategillick.com. So, my series name is there, my name is there. There's no mention of Laterpress in that URL. I think it's also nice and easy to remember. If I talk to somebody and they remember what my series is and they remember what my name is, they're going to figure out the URL to get there. So we give lots of those kinds of options to authors to have more flexibility in how they set things up and price those. And we're also taking this even further. There's the features I'm about to describe to you are not currently available on Laterpress. I don't want to misrepresent that. But all three things that I'm going to mention are in active development and are coming soon. The first is scheduled publishing. We're very, very close to done with this. I was testing it at the end of last week. Very soon, authors will, like Kindle Vella, be able to say, I want to publish my episode on Friday at noon and hit go. And the chapter will go live at that time. And so you could upload 10 chapters if you're writing ahead. And let's say you release one chapter a week. You could schedule each of those chapters for consecutive Fridays. So you're going to hit your publishing schedule and you don't even have to think about it. The system just handles that for you automatically. Tied into that publication feature, and this part exists right now, is we have it set up so that when somebody publishes a chapter, they have the option to send an email notification to everyone who has clicked yes that they want author notifications. So anytime you publish an episode, everyone who's reading it can get an email to say, hey, there's a new episode available, which makes it a lot easier to keep your fans notified of when new chapters are available. We're also currently working on discount code functionalities. So if somebody wanted to say, we just had Thanksgiving, Black Friday special, 50% off, 2 weeks only, you could set something like that up and distribute codes to run sales on your own content. That's going to be the second thing that ships. The final feature that we're working on that I don't think any other serial platform has, to my knowledge, is audio functionality. That is going to take the longest to develop, and that will not be out until 2025. I'm not going to put any timeline on it. But we are working on audio functionality so that people would be able to listen to chapters. And that's going to be on a chapter by chapter basis. So if you are serializing and you just released chapter 3, once you're done working on the chapter, shortly after that, you can turn around and have audio produced on it. And that's going to be text to speech, basically. It's not going to be, obviously, we can't just magically make human narration happen in an instant, but, and I don't want to get too deep into the technicals on how that's going to work, because like I said, that's still in very, very early development. But the idea would be that you can publish a chapter and very rapidly have a listening experience available, so that for people, for either preference or accessibility reasons, have a strong preference to listen to things rather than reading it, then people would be able to do that. And like I said, I'm not aware of any other platform that's offering that right now.
Oh, that's really cool. Well, we're both a strong proponent of accessibility, so that is great to hear. I did have a follow-on question to that, which is, Helen and I were just talking about the importance of newsletters. What kind of newsletter features does Laterpress offer? Like, for example, can readers release their email, like, if you will, to the author to sign them up for a newsletter if they so choose? How does that work?
Yeah, yes, you hit on it. So what happens is, from a reader's perspective, let's say a reader opens up your book on Laterpress and they start reading it and they're going to buy chapters, or even if they haven't bought chapters, there's a tab they can go to. There's basically two different places to find it. I won't give you a verbal tutorial, but readers have the ability to click a button that's, yes, I wish to receive notifications from this author. Two things happen when somebody clicks yes to that. The first is that our system will automatically send them emails whenever an author publishes a new chapter or a new book, if the author chooses to send that notification out. The second thing that happens is that authors, in their dashboard, in their account, have the ability to download reports showing who all of their readers are and showing sales data and all of that. Those reports show the email addresses of those readers and whether or not they clicked yes or no for notifications. If somebody has clicked yes to that, and consented to notifications, then authors can pull those emails off of their reports and import them into whatever software they're using for sending out their regular newsletters. And so add readers that way to start sending them their regular emails. So we do have a system in there to help authors capture reader data to grow your newsletters.
Wow. That's incredible because, I mean, anyone that uses the Amazon Kindle platform knows that why can't you share? We all know why Amazon doesn't share, but that is one of the screaming asks is please just let us communicate with our readers. We're not going to take your business. So
Right.
that is awesome.
Yeah, that's a very big deal for us is, platforms like Amazon, sure they're reading your books and they love you, but they're not are they really your reader? They're there through Amazon. And
Yeah.
if you have a Patreon, people may love you, but Patreon owns all of that data. We wanted to do what we can to say your customers are your customers. Like if somebody decides, "Hey, Laterpress isn't for me, I'm going to pull my books." You can download, before you do, you can download all of your reports, know everybody who ever bought something from you, and then send them all emails going, "Hey, I've migrated over to X platform." Like, we respect authors' time. So we wanted to make it very easy for people to join us. And we didn't want to be like the jealous girlfriend. We also wanted to make it easy to leave us, and keep all of your customer data because we feel that you should have that information.
First of all, I want to say, or your jealous boyfriend or your jealous friend. I want to be totally inclusive
Yes.
about our problems. So, Nate, I know you've talked quite a bit about the features that Laterpress has for engaging with your readers, but from a writing perspective, are there any tips you would like to share?
Yeah, there's a few things I learned while I was serializing my debut novel. The first one for me, the biggest one is cliffhangers, cliffhangers, cliffhangers. Readers may tell you that they hate those. I firmly believe that they're lying. At least
Mm.
at least from a serial perspective. If we're talking about a cliffhanger at the end of a novel and the next book in the series isn't going to be out for a year, that's a completely different beast. But
Yeah.
I think cliffhangers where you're leaving someone hanging and they know the next chapter is going to come out next week, that is completely fine. Cliffhanger people constantly, always leave your audience wanting more. But the trick with that is mixing up the cliffhangers. If it's the same kind of cliffhanger every time where, every chapter ends with a knife at someone's throat or something, and it's always, "Oh, no, there's going to be a big fight," then that starts to get really grating and old to people. So it's kind of mixing things up. One example of cliffhanger might be, the characters walk into an imminent fight and there's clear and present danger. Another cliffhanger might be that you've set up lore for what's going on, and it's clear that you're about to drop the bomb on answering a question that readers have been having for ages, and now they need to wait to know what's going on next week. Another one could be interpersonal conflict, where a situation has been brewing between characters for several chapters now, and all of a sudden somebody said something, and that's going to kick off a big argument between them. And that line is the cliffhanger, and the next chapter starts with their big argument. That sort of thing, just kind of mixing up the variety of how you're ending things, where you're leaving the reader dying to know what happens next, but then also paying it off in the following chapter. Uh, I think if you leave someone hanging, with a character about to enter a dragon's den, and then you spend the next 3 chapters with a side character miles away doing something else, readers are not going to be very appreciative of that. So I think it's, setting it up and then immediately giving payoff to people, rewarding them for returning to find out what happened. I had so many readers while I was serializing my book just absolutely furious with me about my cliffhangers, but they weren't actually mad. They were just like, "Oh my god, I need to know what's happening fast. Give me the next chapter now."
Mhm.
That
That
sound that's great. I'm sorry, that's a wonderful piece of feedback. Go on, Nate.
And it's a
that's
great problem to have as an author.
I mean, if you are if you are serializing and you have your readers mad at you because they are dying to know what happens next, that's how you know you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Is when they're like, I need the next chapter, give it to me now. If you start hearing that, you're killing it. That is
Yeah.
the clearest sign that you are killing it. Your readers love your book. They're highly engaged. You know you've got them hooked when you start hearing that. So serializing, I'm a huge proponent of cliffhangers, even softer ones like leaving somebody with a question, making them want to know more, anything that is going to bring them back and it doesn't feel like you're being cheap, then do it. Like I don't end every single one of my chapters on a cliffhanger. That would be exhausting, but a significant percentage of them do. Um, just to keep people guessing.
Yeah.
The other the other bit of advice I would have for folks on engagement is as you're collecting emails or running a newsletter and however you keep in contact with your readership, social media, anything else like that, solicit feedback from your readers. Consider running polls like, hey guys, who are your favorite characters? What are you liking about the story so far? What are you not liking about the story so far? Um, I can give you one powerful example of how that personally benefited me. As I was writing my book, I came to a section of the story where my main character is a pyromancer, so she can manipulate, create, control fire. And her group need to go out to sea for a quest that they're on as part of the story. And it is required of my main character, Serena, that she partners with a character whose name is Taco. He is a member of a race called the Octari, who are intelligent octopus who have the ability to manipulate and control water, basically because they want somebody who can control water around to put out any fires she might start if she has an accident. And Taco was meant to be a side character who would only exist for that section of the story. So he was going to be in for 4 or 5 chapters and then he'd be out. We'd never hear from him again. The dynamic between those 2 characters, the banter between them, all of the, weird and unique things that go into that species I created was so enormously popular. I was not prepared for how much people love Taco. Like, if I ask people who their favorite character in the book is, I only get 2 answers. It's either my dryad character, Ivy, or it's Taco. People love him. To the extent I think my parents are joking, but they told me if I ever kill off Taco, they're taking me out of the well.
Mm-hmm.
He was a complete throwaway character. When I realized how much everybody loved him, and I was having a blast writing him too in that byplay, 'cause between him and Serena, there's a bit of a grumpy sunshine dynamic going on, which is just so fun to play with. So, in response to his popularity, I was like, "I cannot get rid of him after 5 chapters." So, I was still writing ahead at that time, so I rearranged it so that after that quest was done, Taco would continue to exist with Serena, and the longer the book goes, the more popular he became to the extent where I was like, if anything happens to Taco, everyone is going to hate me. And so he's gone from a throwaway character to I have major character arc plans for him and Serena over the course of the entire series. And that never would have happened if readers hadn't told me how much they love him and how much of a home run he is as a character.
And if you wouldn't have asked them,
Yes.
that's the key. Yeah, yeah, I get that. That is very important. And are there mechanisms in later press to allow for that?
Yeah, not so much directly. I think people think of communication features like we don't have any comments section enabled right now, so people can't comment on individual chapters or anything like that. Um, we also don't have any equivalent to Kindle Vella's author notes, where there's like a separate dedicated box that very clearly says author's note. However, there's nothing stopping an author from at the bottom of a chapter, just typing in their own author's note that says, "Hey, I'd love to hear what you think about these characters. What do you think about the direction of the plot? Please feel free to email me at," and then leave your email in there. or sign up for my newsletter, or you could put anything you want at the end of a chapter to tell people how to reach out to you to provide feedback. We don't have any rules
Okay.
against writing something like that to solicit feedback and then putting that in the chapter.
Well, that is a feature, I think, because if I'm not mistaken, I don't think that's allowed or was allowed in Kindle Vella, dropping anything with an address or a URL or anything.
Yeah,
So,
we don't really support putting links into the text, but you could write out the link and then somebody could
mhm,
type it out. I mean, we have protections in place to keep people from copy pasting text for
mhm.
obvious anti-piracy reasons. We don't want somebody to just, start copy pasting your whole book out of Laterpress to pirate it. But you could type out a link there or send people to other places. And we allow that. If we found that somebody was putting nefarious links in their book, then we might take action on that on an individual basis. But right now, we assume that anybody who's doing something like that is being respectful of themselves and their audience and only putting in any kind of information that links to something that is actually relevant to you.
Good. Now, I know you already touched on some of this, so I think we're going to focus on the adapting the content part. But given that authors often face evolving trends and reader preferences, how does Letterpress support authors in adapting their content and then linking that with the monetization strategies over time?
I think the innate flexibility of our platform really, really helps with that. Right now, on a subscription front, lots of authors have the subscription model and the recurring revenue. When we launched, we only had subscriptions on an annual basis where somebody had to buy in a year, which is very different than how pretty much any other platform operates. And that created a little bit of like sticker shock and confusion because if somebody's going to charge for an entire year at once, obviously they're going to charge more for that. We are working on a monthly option so that folks will have that soon. So folks who want to do a recurring subscription model on a monthly basis will be able to do that. We also do not lock you into whatever price you set when you create a book. So if you create a book and you decide you want to start selling it as a single book purchase, but then you realize, no, I intended to keep this as a really long ongoing serial. I don't want to just sell it once and then be beholden to these people forever. You can change it to a chapter bundle model. Everybody who already bought in would continue to have access to the whole book, but any future readers would start paying on a chapter bundle basis. Or you could flip it the other way around where you're selling chapter bundles first and then you just decide to make it an entire book. We have a collections feature, which basically works like a folder that you decide what goes into it. Those are commonly used where one collection is a home for an entire series so that folks can separate out, where all of the stories live. And you're able to move things around and rearrange things. So if you're deciding to change how you monetize your books, there's a lot of different ways on how you can reconfigure your content on Laterpress without having to unpublish it or delete it or move to a different platform or anything like that.
Wow, that's really good. One key thing I'm hearing over and over here is flexibility. And flexibility, unfortunately, is lacking on a lot of the platforms out there. So that kudos to Laterpress for really leading with this flexibility mindset.
Yeah, that
That's
was that was one of my big frustrations with Kindle Vella is that unless I'm much mistaken, when you published a chapter on Kindle Vella, that's what its order in the book was forever. So if as you're writing something, you're like, oh no, I needed an extra scene earlier on to explain this, you can't go back and insert, a new chapter 4 between chapters 3 and 5. You're just stuck. Where with our books, you can reorder chapters around as needed. You can very easily edit and republish chapters if you need to make substantial changes. And once you click the button, it goes live. It's not like Amazon where you have to wait for some, robot or whatever to scan your content and approve it before it goes live. you make those edits, you click the button, and it's there. So because when I started writing my book, it was the first thing I'd written in 10 years. There was a long gap between when I had been writing. So I had a lot of rust to shake off to get back into form as I was writing the book, to the point where when I've been revising the book, basically I felt it was easier to just delete the first 3 or 4 chapters of my book and completely rewrite them versus trying to edit and massage what was already there. And on Kindle Vella, there's no way to really, delete those first 3 chapters and replace them with 4 new and better ones. Whereas, on Laterpress, that's exactly what I did. I deleted those early chapters. I put the new ones in. So anybody who's takes a look at the Kindle Vella version of my book right now and reads the first 3 chapters, then goes to Laterpress and reads the first 3 chapters, you will notice that they are entirely different. And the versions that exist on Laterpress now more accurately reflect what the final book is going to look like.
Okay, we're on to our last question here. For authors looking to transition from Kindle Vella to Laterpress, what are the steps and considerations that they should keep in mind to make the shift as smooth and beneficial as possible?
One thing there's several things I can think of. One of them is a bit of a mindset shift and expectation recalibration going into it. Because some of the ideas between Kindle Vella and Laterpress are fundamentally different. Kindle Vella went for the big centralized platform approach because they're Amazon, they're big, they're huge, and everyone knows them. Where people are buying into the idea that Amazon will direct a lot of traffic your way because they're huge. Laterpress, at this phase in our life, we started it as a direct sales focused platform and trying to get all of those monetization options and customization right and create a good reader experience. So we started with that, and therefore I'm very honest with people to assume when you're publishing on Laterpress, to assume that the vast majority of the traffic you bring that comes on your book on Laterpress is traffic that you brought there versus Amazon finding readers for you. No, that is a huge part of the reason why, and I'm surprised I haven't mentioned this yet. That is a huge percent of the reason why Laterpress does not take anything on an author's direct sales. We take literally zero cut. So if you're, for example, my ebook is on sale for Laterpress for $4.99, $5. The only cut that comes off of that when somebody buys my book is Stripe's payment processing fees, which I think are 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction. So anytime I sell a $4.99 ebook, $4.35, give or take, gets deposited into my bank account, which is, infinitely better than Amazon taking 30% for the same price. And the funds get deposited in your bank account within like 3 to 5 business days versus waiting months after Amazon made a sale. So that's all very, very nice. Laterpress only takes a cutoff of author sales when our recommendations features led a new reader to your book who wouldn't have found it otherwise. So, Steaphan, let's say you and I both have a book up on Laterpress and somebody reads my book and then they go into the recommendations and they find yours and then they buy yours. What happens then is Laterpress would take a 15% cut off the sale of your book. 10% goes to Laterpress as our profit for directing a new reader to you. And the other 5% goes to me as the author who led a reader to finding your book. So effectively, what that means is that any author on Laterpress is able to monetize their own also bots for any traffic they're bringing to other authors. And Laterpress is only getting a cut of sales when we helped you find a reader that you would not have found otherwise. So we built that very much as like a rising tide lifts all boats situation where our profit motive and your profit motive line up with each other and we're both swimming in the same direction. We all want the same thing. In the 3 years that I've been with the company, I have yet to ever hear anybody complain about that setup. Because if you bring somebody in and they buy your book, we don't take anything out of that. And if we did do something that had helped you make a sale, that 15% cut is half of what Amazon was going to take. So never heard anybody complain about that. People really, really like that. But it's that mindset shift of, I need to bring people to this, not Amazon is going to bring people to this. Given what I just said about we only make a profit when our recommendations and stuff bring somebody in, that shows you it's very clearly in our financial best interests to continue to improve those kinds of features over time and help better facilitate new readers finding new authors. So obviously we're going to want to improve on that over time. But with where we're at in our life right now, that's why I tell people, assume that have that direct seller mentality. I am the one bringing eyes on my book. You have to be a little more entrepreneurial about it.
I mean, that's really genius, by the way. I run IndieAuthors.Social, and the motto there is authors helping authors.
Mhm.
And the strategy of only paying royalties when you recommend a reader, and then letting also reds and also bots, that's genius. I mean, and really lifts, as you said, lifts the tide for all authors on your platform. That's awesome.
We succeed when you succeed. So if we're not helping you grow your readership, we're not making money.
You
So,
know,
that's very much in our best interests to be helping all authors expand and grow. Um, as far as like a physical migration standpoint goes, like, okay, I have this content on Laterpress. How do I actually get it? Or I have this content on Kindle Vella. How do I actually get it into Laterpress? That would depend on how people have it written. I'm hoping people weren't writing and publishing chapters directly from the Kindle Vella editor. I hope you have it on your hard drive or,
yeah.
Google Docs or something somewhere. There's two different ways to get your content into Laterpress. You could either manually copy and paste it chapter by chapter into the editor, or if you have the ability to turn it into an EPUB, we have a feature where you can upload an EPUB and our system will convert those into chapters and upload all of that text automatically. And you may have to do a small amount of cleanup with chapter titles, chapter names, or anything like that, but it streamlines the process very, very much. Like my book is 65 chapters, and I could upload that EPUB. And if I'm not happy with how the chapter names came in, I could still clean that up and have the book live in 5 to 10 minutes. And my book's a 180,000 word epic fantasy chonker. So
Wow.
it's not it's not a very complicated or time consuming process.
Mm.
As long as you're willing to make a very minimal time investment to get that set up right.
One thing I wanted to make sure I understand. So having listened to you describe Laterpress and some of these features, if I were, as we've been discussing, an author who is hopefully by now, and I know what we recommended to everybody when we first heard about Kindle Vella shutting down was to, you know, create an author page or an update link or something so people could find you, save your work, finish up your stuff on Vella. But when it comes to considering platforms to move to, the things you've described about Laterpress, definitely the huge pro here is that it's very flexible. It almost sounds like it's a platform that was written by authors for authors and also, interested in providing good reader experience. But the pro sounds like the flexibility is really what's there. It does sound like, as you say, you have to work on some of bringing your own audience. But what I also liked is that it sounds like you have active feature development to kind of some of the features you described that are coming up over the course of the next year, such as your publication scheduling and the others. So you're actively developing to get better and better. Would you consider this to be a good summary?
Yeah, I'd say we're at this phase in our life, we're still very much in the building up the platform and adding all of the features that we want. We by no means consider ourselves feature complete, where it's like, oh yeah, we have everything we want, we're done now. Oh goodness, no. There's lots of things we're adding. There's going to be some exciting things in 2025, a few of which I've mentioned, several I'm not allowed to talk about yet. We're very much, like I said, building up the feature set. And then once we've got the feature set more like, okay, this is the vast majority of the things we wanted, that's when we would turn our focus and transition more to bringing in readers to find all of those authors and facilitate more cross traffic. But the order of operations, in our opinion, needed to be one, create a good direct sales experience for authors, to make good publishing tools that you can work with, that you like, that you can set up how you want them. And number two, provide a good reading experience for readers, for anybody who does come in and and read your book. But we have to get that right first and start building up a user base of authors and a library of books, because there's no point in trying to make a big play to bring in readers if there's nothing for them to read. So we're starting with the author side first and really continuing to build and grow that. And then we will pivot towards more features that are reader focused and bringing in a readership once we have everything in place that we want on the author side. And I should mention too that Laterpress has no kinds of contracts or exclusivity clauses or anything like that. So you can publish with us and any other platform you want concurrently, as long as you're not violating any rules that they have about where you publish your book. But so we don't need to be your only option. We could be one tool in your toolkit amongst many, depending on how wide you want to be while you're serializing and how you want to set that up. But I don't want to feel anyone to feel like they're locked into, oh, Letterpress looks good, but I want to use someone else. Well, then go ahead and use someone else, as long as you have the option for both, because we're not chaining you down to anything.
It's all great information, Nate. And I don't really hear any cons out there. Any reasons why not to try? I guess the only possible one might be time. It takes time to try different platforms, though. Doesn't sound like it takes much time to get your serial fiction or your novels to later press.
If I can, sorry, if I
Mhm.
can interject there just on the speed thing. Laterpress, we have a public domain library where if somebody goes to laterpress.com, looks through the options at the top of the page, they can find that. It's a huge library of free public domain books, like some of the Sherlock Holmes books, for example, that somebody could pull up and read if you want examples of what our reader experience looks like without having to pay anything. I personally handled the upload of many of those public domain books using our EPUB uploader and doing the covers and writing my own blurbs or summaries for a lot of those. So I do have more practice than most people, but I could go through the entire process of uploading and publishing a book in 2 minutes.
Right. So, Nate, how can people find you to talk more about this? And of course, how can they sign up for Later Press? What are the resources? And we'll put these in our show notes as well.
Well, our official site is laterpress.com. So nice and easy to remember there. And from our website, if somebody clicks the community tab and then clicks forum, that will take them to a invite link to our Discord, so that somebody can hop in the Discord and ask questions of myself, my boss Scott, or our community there. My email address, it's nice and easy to remember. It's nate@laterpress.com. So people are welcome to send me emails if they want. We also send out a weekly newsletter, so people are welcome to sign up for that as well. I send out five or so links to interesting news articles or stories from around the publishing world every week. I have a Nate's notes section where I can just freeform riff on any topics of interest or offer any advice to authors. And in our newsletter every week, we feature one story that is published on Laterpress as, a consistent week form of social proof of, hey, people are using our platform. Here's an interesting story that you want to check out. I f I number all of those newsletters too, just to show how long the newsletter has been running, because I think in the publishing industry, mere survival and continuing to exist is its own form of legitimacy. We're somewhere in the 120s for newsletters. I've been doing that for a couple of years now, and I haven't run out of new books to feature. So our newsletter's over 120 featured stories, and that number continues to go up every week.
Oh, it's great to hear. And great that you allow authors' materials to be, broadcasted on your platform. So that's really good. Well, Nate, we really want to thank you for taking your time to help everyone out in this Kindle Vella crisis. And it sounds like Laterpress is a very, very good option for any authors out there needing help. Helen, did you have any closing remarks before we wrap this episode?
No, no closing remarks other than to say I love hearing about a platform that's thoughtful. And that's the one thing that stuck out to me, I think, Nate, when you were describing some of the ways it's been designed. So
Yeah,
yeah.
if I could add a comment, I absolutely love my job. It's a total blast every day. And I think when I was applying for it, when Scott posted the opening for marketing community lead, I think a huge part of what helped me land that job is that I am an author myself. So as we're prioritizing how we want to build our platform, how we want to go about things, I get to act from a position of kind of enlightened self-interest where I can go, as an author myself, here's what I want. Or, I've talked to a lot of authors. Here's what authors want. Here's how people are going to react if we do X, Y, or Z. And, I basically in a position where I get to be in the driver's seat helping build my own dream publishing platform, which makes it's super fun. I just sometimes I feel like I can get drunk on power. Like, wait, I want to do that, and now we're building it. I mean, an example is the EPUB uploader feature itself. We originally only had the ability to copy paste chapters, and I was like, Scott, my job is marketing and community lead, which means I'm responsible for getting new people on the platform. I don't know how I'm going to talk to authors who have a backlist of 10 plus books and tell them they need to copy paste all of those books one chapter at a time to get them on their platform. Nobody's going to do that. We need to have an ability to upload an entire EPUB at one rip. And, I outlined my argument for why that was necessary and why we needed it, and we started building it like the next day.
Wow, that's pretty cool. We look forward to hearing about all the new features coming, and maybe we'll have you on again. I think that would be great if you're open to it, to learn about the new features, capabilities, and of course, all the exciting things that Laterpress is doing. With that, we're going to go ahead and close, everyone, and we appreciate you listening, and stay tuned for our next series of episodes. We'll talk to you later. Bye.